an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Veronica Mars, Season 4, Episode 1, Spring Break Forever. In this episode, I see what you guys meant about the tonal shift. It is significant. I like it, though. I actually do. I was kind of into this. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Ariel for commissioning this episode. Ariel is here in the chat. Hi, and hi to Nancy, I think it is, and Jay Smith. So I understand why you guys were like, let's wait and see what she thinks. Okay. The last episode of Season 3 was in 2013. Is that right? And then, was it that late? Or was the movie in 2013? I ask you guys this, I swear to God, every episode, and y'all tell me, and I don't remember shit. I'm sorry. But this, Ariel says, well, also mostly her and Logan getting together in the movie and here still. Yeah, and like I said, with the movie, I really kind of feel like they were saying that maybe this wasn't the best plan. So I have softened a little bit on them choosing to do that, because part of me is sort of like, if they're just acknowledging it, which it really starts to feel like they are, maybe that's just a choice. In which case, I'm not as mad about it, you know? The movie was 2014, and then this was 2019. Oh, wow. It's been 2 years. Fucking time, man. I could swear this just came out last year. I am okay, so the distance in time here, it makes sense that they did do a tonal shift, because what was this aired on? Was it UPN? I feel like I read somewhere. And it's a show that I feel like, because it's meant to be a slightly more grown-up mystery. And I don't mean like the mystery itself. I just mean, I think they're trying to scoop in previous fans of Veronica Mars, obviously, who have aged and are going to be looking for something that's a little bit more adult. But they're obviously still going after a bit of a teen crowd, which is very clear in their choice of the spring break weekend as the backdrop for the episode. It does make sense that they're gonna try and do something that feels a little bit grittier in its way. Nancy says Hulu for the revival. I didn't realize it was exclusive to Hulu. I thought that it aired and then Hulu got it. Okay, my bad. Did it drop all at once, the whole new season? Or was it, Ariel says UPN was season 1 and 2, apparently. Oh, okay. I think I'm sort of into the direction they're going. There is one major flaw for me, though. I don't like the new version of the theme song at all. At first, when I realized that it was the woman singing it, I was like, oh, okay, I see. Cool. I was into it. And then as I continued listening, I was just like, this is too, like, it felt so, like, melancholy. There was no punch, you know? It didn't get me hype. I was just kind of like, I guess. This is the danger. Anytime you do that sort of thing where you take the theme song and you have it play different. The Wire also ran into this. The Wire uses the song, I think Way Down in the Hole is the name of the song, and they have a different version every season. And the first season is just the best version. Every version after that, you're just like, why did you do this, guys? So it just sort of is jarring. Ariel says, I agree so much, especially the hey at the end. I forgot about that. I forgot. Isn't it like long, like, hey? Like, it's sort of like, it's the least hey-ish hey. Because usually hey is meant to be like a declaration, like, hey! Hey! And it's very sort of like wimpy and passive sounding. And I was just like, okay. Yeah, exactly. Nancy says, I wanted to like it. Same. I really wanted, and I was into the concept at first, but nah. I would have liked it if they went with the like acoustic version from the street that we hear in the movie, which I was actually pretty here for. But setting that aside, something that I'm very compelled by already this season, the themes in Veronica Mars of wealth inequality. It's something that it's sort of odd because it is addressed in the show. They just never really I don't feel like they ever make a statement about it. And it feels like they're hammering on it more than I expected them to this episode. And I'm pretty into it because we're really approaching a time in the United States where people are really beginning to get fucking fed up. And we're exposing more and more of the underbelly of worker exploitation and just the overall brokenness of capitalism. And I think it's only appropriate that if we resurrect this show in 2019, we have to take that on a little bit more directly. That said, then there's this whole thing with a cartel in Mexico. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to try, as I always do, to sort of withhold judgment on the choice to have this included at all. Because I don't know what they're planning to do with it. They could go in any number of directions. But in terms of the anxiety about the tone, that for me is the most alarming. I don't know what they're doing. And it feels very different than the whole rest of the episode. You know, like, it's not like the show hasn't dealt with issues of violence and organized crime in the past. But it's always been, like I said, I feel the same way with that I do about income inequality, where they've danced around it, but it never really felt like they did anything much with it. Like the Fitzpatricks, nothing ever really happens with that. We've got Weevil's involvement in the gang and him sort of returning to them at the end of the movie, but we don't really see where that goes or what happens, any consequences of that. And the whole thing with the gang, it's like, it has felt a lot of times in the show like they want to keep Weevil being a good guy enough that they rarely show him doing anything that is actually what somebody in that kind of gang would have to do. The one time we really see it is in the second season, and it's sort of, there's a part of me that understood what was going on there and wasn't even that mad about it. So I am surprised that they're pulling in, it's not a small-time Neptune-based gang. This dude is the head of a cartel. I'm assuming a cartel because of stereotypes. Who has such ties to the local police that they just mention his name. And the police let them roll on through with a body in the back. Not even a body. Guy's still fucking alive. But they're just like, yeah, it's fine. And so we see them drive this dude out to the desert and shoot him in a moment that's probably some of the most graphic violence this show has actually portrayed. There hasn't been a lot of us seeing shit happen. It's been a lot of attempts at violence or coming in the aftermath and finding a body. Watching a shot be fired and somebody die or seeing a person's head tossed out of a car and go rolling along the fucking asphalt. Very different vibe. I don't know how I feel about it. I am curious on the one hand, and on the other, I'm just like, I feel like maybe whoever came up with this storyline wanted to be writing a different show. I don't know. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. The actor who is in the driver's seat of the car in the scene when they have the guy in the trunk, and then who finds the head, I know him from Westworld. He's super good in that. So whether or not the storyline goes where I want, I at least know that I'm in good hands with this actor. I am always here for him. He's got something, So I'm into it for that reason. And it turns out that the nephew of what do they call him? Desperado? Something like that, which I think I looked it up and it means ruthless. It's his ex-wife's nephew that got killed in this bomb blast. And so he is sending 2 people to Neptune to figure out who did it and literally bring their head back. So this is fun for me personally. The whole idea of like, oh, if we don't figure out who did it, the wrong person will go to jail. That is a compelling thing after a point. But adding in, oh no, there's going to be other people doing their own investigating. And their investigation is going to be deeply violent. There will be no rules involved for them. And if Veronica gets in their way, who knows what the fuck they'll think or do. I am into that monkey wrench being thrown into the works. So I am sort of like, what's the word I want? Tentatively excited about it. I'll say that. But, the whole thing with it being the stereotype of a cartel and like these are the only Spanish speaking characters so far, it's a bummer in its way. And I guess we'll just have to see how that goes. Plus side, we have a black woman as chief of police in Neptune now. And we have a black woman who owns the club. This woman, I recognize her and I can't figure out where I know her from. Was she in The Good Place? I'm trying to think if she was in something else too. I can't remember her character's name. So if you guys want to remind me, let me know. But it does feel like that is the show making an effort to get some other people of color into what has been a very white show, Wallace notwithstanding. So I appreciate that too. Let's see. Ariel says, yes, Chidi's limited interest for a little while. Ah, yes. Okay. So, all right, let's talk about the actual plot here. Reminder, the movie ended with Veronica deciding to stay in Neptune, and she really felt like this was the town that needed her. And as we're opening up the show, she's saying, it didn't need me, it needed an enema, which is such a like gross graphic image. And the issue that we're coping with here is, first we start off with her watching the scene of this motel that was bombed. And then we back up a couple days and we see the events that led up to this happening. And the mad bomber of Neptune, the first explosion killed 4 people. So, first clue. This isn't the last one. This isn't the only one, which is very interesting. Somebody who plants a bomb, you usually associate that with either terrorism for a cause of a particular type, and they target a building that is sort of a symbol for what they're fighting against, or an attempt at an assassination, which usually means that they're just going to try this once. The fact that this is somebody who is planting multiple bombs is part of what I'm like, I don't know what to think now. I could have come up with a theory if I didn't know that, but I do. So now what? Nancy reminded me, okay, her name is Kirby Howell Baptiste. Good Place, Killing Eve. Killing Eve is the one that I really know her from. Thank you, Nancy. Because I was like, I think there was something else. Yes. Okay. So, as I say, we are starting off with the spring break backdrop to the show. Can we talk about spring break briefly, guys? Show of hands, how many of y'all have ever experienced this kind of spring break? I understand that when you see it like this, it's meant to be college students. But personally, I have never spent spring break anywhere away from my family. Anytime that I had a break from school, I went home. And it never really was like party time. I just wasn't this type. Anyway, I was never a partier. I didn't drink in high school. I didn't drink till college. And even in college, I didn't like it that much. It was like fine, but it just didn't, and, but it was the sort of thing that I was so sort of like interested in a theoretical way, because I really liked dressing in extremely revealing clothing. I liked dancing. I liked flirting. And I enjoyed being the center of attention. So whenever I would see Spring Break on MTV and all of these hot girls bouncing around in bikinis and hot shirtless dudes on the beach, there was a big part of me that was like, oh, that looks like it could be a really good time. But it just never felt like it was for me. Not really. There was, first of all, the drinking just always put me off. I don't like being around drunk people most of the time, unless they're friends of mine who I know well. And secondly, it was a very white crowd. And as much as I pass for white and look white, I never really feel at home around solely a white crowd. And I just, especially with like dealing with body image issues and being Latina, I always felt like I was going to be the fattest girl there, which is hilarious. But, I definitely like had this like worry about it. And I look back and I sort of wish that I had tried it out at least once. But I probably wouldn't have really liked it. Probably not. Ariel says, yikes. No, I don't think your listeners are generally going to be that type. Probably not. Nancy says, spent spring break at a friend's house. We drank, but we also rented a bunch of movies and stayed inside in Philly. Yeah, like, I would definitely go out dancing and whatnot, but this sort of environment where you are surrounded by your peers and there isn't any sort of like parental or just in general authority figure watching over things, that also was sort of uncomfortable for me. That's the appeal of it for a lot of people. But having seen the way that people acted at that age in person, the idea to me of being around folks like that outside of the bounds of anything like being like the consequences, I just felt like that was a recipe for disaster. Probably I was right. That said, I know that it exists. It's just the kind of thing that I have a hard time really buying it exists because I've never experienced it and nobody that I'm friends with has ever experienced this. So all I have to go on is the portrayal of it on things like MTV Spring Break, or movies and shows like this. So it's just one of those things that I'm like, I believe that this happens 100%. And I know that regarding COVID, spring break was like a major problem because they were closing shit up, but they were losing a huge amount of revenue because they were closing up right before spring break. And then there were kids that decided to fucking go anyway. So I know that it's a thing. It's just, So we get that backdrop to everything. And it's interesting because we see a little bit more of some side players than one would expect. And this is, I am assuming, all to set up the people that are in the hotel when the bomb goes off. So we have, first of all, this one dude who, he sucks. He looks a little bit like Duncan to me. And he is at that club with the black woman owner. And there's like a whole sort of town council meeting, or I don't even know what you want to call it, that Veronica attends with her dad. And Dick's father is there. I'm pretty sure that's him, unless I'm mistaken. And he's trying to, like, close down the nightlife and the sort of, I would say he's campaigning against spring break, but he's obviously targeting certain types of businesses. And the owner of this club is pretty aggressive about pointing out the hypocrisy of what it is that he's trying to do and how much she brings to the community. And she just comes across in that moment as being very in charge of the situation, extremely, what's the word that I want? Because aggressive, I mean it as a compliment, but I know that that can be taken as an insult. But I'm going to use it. She comes across as really aggressive about it in a way that I deeply admire. And obviously Veronica does too, because she sees this woman just like get in his face a little bit in front of everybody. And she's like, oh my God, who is that? And we see this come across again later. She spots this dude. He has found this girl passed out drunk in a booth at the club. And he goes over to her and begins to like move her toward him and put her hand in his lap. Then like pulls her head down so it sort of looks like she's giving him a blowjob. And she's straight up unconscious. Like she's unaware this is happening. And he says like to his friends, hey guys, get my phone, take a photo. I'm going to post this on my Instagram. And the club owner, she spots him and she goes over there and fucking decks him in the face. And it is the most satisfying shit I have ever seen in my life. Honestly, straight up. Like, it's so great. Everybody is looking at her. The bouncers come running over and they're sort of like, what? And she's just like right back at them. What? Get them out of there. Take their photo. Make sure that they are never coming back here again. I wonder if the fact that people witnessed her punching him in the face is going to tie in and they're going to try and accuse her of like planting a bomb to get at this kid. That feels very tentative to me, but who knows what they're going to try and like string together. And the fact that her business is already being targeted feels like she's sort of got a target on her back already. So attempting to put those pieces in that order might be very tempting for somebody who is already interested in keeping her from succeeding. And I really wonder, because there's something about the way she reacts here. And she says something to the bouncers about like, find her shitty friends and tell them to get her out of here before I get them thrown into the drunk tank, or something like that. I feel like maybe something happened to her, because there is a vibe to it of, especially pointing out the shitty friends, of feeling like nobody had my back, so I am definitely going to have this girl's back, you know? I don't know, just putting it out there. So that's the one character that we see. Then there's this other character, Patton Oswalt, who is a pizza delivery guy. Guys, I loved this so much. I really did. These are the moments, because the show previously, like I said, they have dealt with income inequality. But I feel like this episode captured so much more accurately the specific moments of being demeaned in a service position and the reason that they get to you the way they do. So he is delivering this pizza to this fucking hotel, crawling with people. Somebody tries to like fake him out and say that these pizzas are for them when they're clearly not. And it's that guy, actually, the one that tried to take the photo of that girl. So obviously this dude just sucks. And it's sort of an interesting thing that they're doing, because the pizzas are being delivered actually to a group of nerds. But the nerds are not portrayed as better people. They are just shitty in different ways. So we've got like the jock assholes who have their own distinctive brand of gross. But then the nerds are also pretty misogynistic in their way. And they treat this dude who's bringing in the pizzas just as shittily. They have their own type of being spoiled and privileged that they're working with. So when he finally comes in, they don't even like stand up or say anything to him. They just like, the money's over there on the counter. And he looks over and it's just a pile of dollar bills, like crumpled up, and a bunch of change. Y'all, this got to me so bad. This is the kind of thing. And I sort of like said something like this to Owen's grandfather one time. When I was cashiering, I cashiered at Target for a little while when I first moved to Philly. One of the things that I found the most demeaning was when people would throw their money or their card on the counter for me to pick up instead of handing it to me. It's such a small thing, but it feels really dismissive, and especially when the money's crumpled up like it is in this scene, because I have had that many times. It just feels like sort of degrading to be like, here, you sort this out on my behalf. And Owen's grandfather did a couple things during a game where he was like tossing the cards to Owen instead of handing them to him. So Owen had to like get them all picked up off of the tabletop. And I said, I bet you toss money at cashiers too, don't you? And he stopped and was like, yeah, I do. Why? And I was like, I worked as a cashier for a long time and I absolutely hated that. That was one of my biggest pet peeves. It's just really gross. And he seemed taken aback by that. And I don't know if it has changed his behavior at all. He may have just let it roll off him and doesn't care. But I felt the need to say something because it just brought up a memory of that kind of person. And again, it's something that's so small, but just gets to you, you know? So they like crack a joke about how he's not getting a tip and everything else before he leaves. And there's just a real sense of these assholes being the worst. And this time of year, yeah, they're bringing in money and business, but like, is it worth it? You know, there's a sort of vibe there. So he goes downstairs after delivering this pizza and brings a pizza to the owner of the hotel and his daughter. And they have sort of a sweet dynamic going on too, which makes it a lot worse when he dies. He is killed in the bombing, but his daughter survives, and that is the person who Veronica mentions later that she starts to care about, and that gets her drawn too far into this whole mess. And when Veronica's talking about caring about her, she also says, if she had known everything about this case before she got involved, she may not have done it, which is also a pretty compelling line. You know, what does that mean? So this girl and her dad, you know, they're joking around a lot because her parents are divorced and her dad made coffee with cinnamon in it and she hates it. And he's like, well, why don't you go to your mom's for coffee? Oh, that's right. She doesn't let you drink coffee. You know, like this sort of back and forth that I really enjoyed. And the pizza comes and they are teasing each other about him not eating it all. And they clearly know the delivery guy pretty well. And then this couple comes downstairs. I don't remember what country they're meant to be from, because I think his fiance, he speaks a different language. I don't know if she does or not. So I think they're both American, but he is speaking a different language at one point. And they got a room at the Neptune Grand. So they're going to be leaving this place. And they're trying to get a refund onto their card for the money for the nights that they had like prepaid, which evidently isn't like allowed. And so they're in the midst of sort of fighting about this. As they're arguing with the owner, the fiance gets a delivery of her makeup bag from one of the girls who we saw joking around with her friends and handling the pizza guy for a minute before she goes and gets the bag and brings it down. So the fiance is talking to her briefly about how she is supposed to meet this guy's parents soon, and she doesn't know she doesn't know how to handle it. They're going to hate her. And apparently she turned down a $50,000 payoff that they attempted to give her to keep her out of his life. So they were very intent on separating her from their son, and it did not work, which points to the fact that she genuinely gives a shit about him, and also that they suck. But it turns out she died in the bombing as well. And later on, when Cliff, who I'm so delighted to see is back, is talking to them about the bombing, the mother emphasizes how her son lost a hand and will never be able to like play football again. And he's like, yeah, and his fiance died. And he notes that this woman does not seem to give a shit about that at all. So that's the like group of players that are in the lobby when the bomb goes off. I can't remember because they say that there were 4 deaths. So we've got the owner, we've got the fiance, and is the guy who came in to chat with the girl who brought the makeup bag, did both of them die also, I think? Because he sees her like going down the stairs and is like, ooh, I gotta go get a snack or something to munch. He says something like really lame. And so he follows her there to like get her name and invite her to a party later on. Let's see. Nancy says, meanwhile, having counted out numerous registers, I like my bills to be flat and all facing the same way when I hand them over. Yeah, same. I am a little bit too neurotic. Not only do I want all my bills facing the same way, but I am one of those people that like, I need to have all my shit ready when I get to the register, and it blows my mind. This was something with Brendan and with Owen. They act like paying is a surprise. They're watching it get rung up. They know what they're here for, and then they get told what the total is, and they're like, oh. And then they fumble for their wallet and search for their card. And I did that shit like 10 minutes earlier, like for me, I just don't understand. So let's see, the douchebag from Senor Quacks, my God, that's the name of the place, and the motel pool. Okay, so he died, the owner died, the fiance died. Who was the 4th fatality? Because they said 4 people, right? I think. And Patton Oswalt is leaving as the bomb goes off. So he gets a bunch of shrapnel in the back, and later on he's like talking on the phone about it. Oh, right. Ariel says the cartel kid. Did we see him? I don't remember that guy. I forgot that that's the point of the whole thing of why What's-Her-Face is so mad. But, yeah, I did not remember that. Okay. So Nancy just says, oh, and I'm like, on the edge of my seat waiting. What's oh? He came down to complain about the Wi-Fi. Oh, thank you. I didn't realize that he was still in the lobby at that point. I thought that he came down and complained and left. Or maybe he was leaving. But okay, gotcha. So, that's the lineup. Like I said, Patton Oswalt is leaving. The daughter is sitting in the car outside the hotel like she's about to get her homework, I think her dad sends her to go, like, grab. Whatever it is, they are not in danger for their lives, but they are right on the edge. Like, they almost got. And so then this is when we get the wonderful intro of Cliff. Because Cliff, first of all, has had a fucking glow up. And I said this the last time when we saw him in the movie. But this man looks better than ever, I swear to God. Something in his face is very Tom Hanks for me. And I kept getting that throughout this episode. And I don't know if it's like part of the way that he has aged or what. But he gets called an ambulance chaser by a couple people and really just does not seem to be worried about it. And because that's what he is. And he seems just like, oh, you're really hurting me with that. But he knows what he is. And he comes to give everybody his card and, you know, sort of counsels them that they don't need to pay for any of this. And when he comes to Patton Oswalt's room, that guy's on the phone with somebody he's joking around with. And he really doesn't seem like that upset by this happening. He goes to see, the girl. Oh, I forgot. Yeah, she survived. I forgot that we actually see her in the hospital. But the girl that brought the makeup bag is, he only speaks with her for a few minutes. And then he goes to the room of the kid whose brother is a state senator, if I'm not mistaken. And the brother and his mother, perhaps, are standing outside the room, and they talk to Cliff. She clearly does not give a shit about this dude's fiance being dead. They have plenty of money. And also, this kid turned out to be, like, staying at the motel because he was supposed to be able to stay at their, like, house that they have in the area. But the brother says that they were working on some sort of, like, renovation. And so at the last second, there was like a miscommunication and he wasn't able to stay there. So he had to get a room at a hotel with no notice, which is part of why they just didn't seem to fit. You know, there's this it's a clearly pretty low rent motel, all teenagers. And then there's this dude and his fiance who have money and are obviously out of place. And that's why they were trying to move to a better hotel. So yeah, they ask Cliff if he knows anybody who can find out who did this. And Cliff gets that look on his face. Well, as a matter of fact. So we're going to talk about Veronica now. What's going on with her? She and Logan have a place right on the beach. And they are living together. And she is happy with that. First of all, they're living right on the beach, which, like, sounds great, but I can't believe what a nightmare it looks like. She walks out her back door, and it's just a fucking party 10 feet from the back door of her house. Like, that just sounds like it sucks. Any other time of year, I'm sure it's lovely. But, like, at the moment, I'm just like, ew. And when she gets home, she expects him to still be out. But she sees a duffel bag on the floor and realizes that he's home. And goes and searches for him. And there's a pretty good moment of him coming up out of the water, looking like fucking Daniel Craig in Casino Royale in those trunks. And I swear to God, you guys, I don't understand how Logan is, like, so much better looking now. But he just, first of all, he got jacked. And second of all, the thing that I noticed in the movie is still very present now, which is there is a sort of, like, settled feeling to him. He just doesn't seem as rageful as he did, and sullen. So she goes out onto the beach, and there's these two girls checking him out, and she pretends like she doesn't know him and just asks him to come to her house in exchange for moving her refrigerator. And he says, what's in it for me? And she says, hand job. And this is like, throughout this episode, that's probably what I noticed the most, is that they're much freer in their talking about sex than they have ever been on the show. They have never been too shy about it. It's always been subtext, but they are really just saying shit here. And eventually she's like, he says a hand job, and he says with eye contact, and she says, okay, but then you're going to have to take my old fridge down to the curb, and there's a couple of pictures that I need hung. And then he says full sex, and she's like, fine, but no more talking. And meanwhile, these two girls are watching, not aware that they actually know each other. And it really is a very well done scene. I found this really funny. And as he's walking away with her, one of the girls says, I don't need anything brought to the curb, and I live on the first floor. And he says to Veronica, that sounds like a much better deal. And he starts to walk away. Oh, I just thought that was cute. I like that. So the way that he proposes, he puts the ring loose, I guess, in his bag. It wasn't in a box, right, guys? And because he just knows that she's going to rifle through his shit when he gets home. And so he like plays into that and just puts the loose ring in a pocket for her to find. He doesn't eventually have to tell her which pocket, though. And instead of being excited, she is upset because she thought they were on the same page with not wanting to get married. And this is one of those things that I always find really puzzling. I understand not wanting to have children. You can't take that back. You know, you can't have kids and 8 years in be like, this was a mistake. I don't want kids. Like, you just, that's it. You decide it, and that's it. That's your life now. Marriage, though, you could get out of that whenever. It's really not that big a deal. And maybe that just points to me not taking marriage that seriously. But you're supposed to be married because you love somebody, not because you have to stay married. So if you don't want to do it anymore, I just don't get taking pride in continuing to do it. You know, the idea of like, well, when I get married, I mean it. And that's a vow that I'm going to keep. To me, that's like, that defeats the purpose of wanting to be married. So I don't see it. I don't get that. So her reaction to him proposing, for me, I'm just like, you're acting like marriage is going to change your relationship. It doesn't. It's a tax break. It's getting visitation rights at the hospital. It's having somebody to like write your life insurance policy to be given the check. It's really not much of a change, Veronica. Y'all are living together already. Like, what are you worried about? But she has this feeling about it. I understand it. Like I said, with kids, I also like have this thing. I have had a couple of friends who they decided that they weren't going to get married, but they were definitely going to sign on a house together with their boyfriend. What? Like, that's so much more commitment than marriage. Marriage, you can find somebody and sign divorce papers and you will be done. And that's done. If you are in on a house with somebody and shit goes wrong, they have got you by the balls. Like, you know, the only thing about marriage that I can understand being concerned over is if you have a great deal more, like, financially, and you're worried about potentially being taken advantage of. Okay, prenup then. I don't know. Just like, it doesn't worry me. And a house for sure is much more binding, and a child is much more binding. But she really doesn't have a good reaction to this. And later on, she and Logan go to see Wallace. Wallace has gotten married and has a kid, little kid named Noah. Adorable. And Veronica is just not engaged at this party, or it's not even a party, it's just like a little get-together. But it's one of those moments where I just don't know why anybody is friends with Veronica. Every time we see her allegedly socializing, she doesn't seem to give any fucks about any of the people that she is with. She just doesn't, you know? Like, she'll come through to help people out when they're in crisis and stuff, but it doesn't feel like it's because she cares so much about them, as she just, like, that's just a reflex for her. And this moment when they're all sitting around the fucking, they're sitting around the table talking, and she's on her phone and doesn't notice when they start talking to her. I was just like, girl, what are you doing? Like, just get out of here. Let's see. Ariel says, LOL, she's not engaged. Oh my God, Ariel. I get it. I see what you did there. Get out of here. Get out. You're fired. So it turns out it's like the bombing that's kind of distracting her, and she's looking up all this information about it. But again, I'm just like, you are here with people who have they've made dinner for you and they have just finished. They're sitting there with their plates still there. And she's like, we probably have to head home, right, honey? And Logan's the one who says, how about some Cards Against Humanity? And she gets a little agitated when she sees Logan playing with the baby. Now, this is different. Him wanting to get married, I don't understand why she's worried about it. If he wants to have kids and she doesn't, that's a much different situation. I got really lucky both with Brendan and with Owen. I found somebody who wanted children as little as I did. I thank God every single fucking day that I don't have kids. No joke. Every day. I don't know how people do it. And if he wants to have kids and she doesn't, that's a much bigger problem. Because there's only so long of a window that you've got to have them. And not having them if you want them because your partner doesn't can lead to feelings of resentment, but not as bad as having them when you didn't want them. And also, she's the one that has to have them if they want to have biological kids, which I'm definitely assuming that's what Logan wants. So you're asking your female partner to go through the absolute trauma of pregnancy and childbirth when she doesn't want it, and then be on the hook for the next quarter century to your child. Different situation, man. And she's worried about it, and I don't blame her, because if you aren't on the same page with your partner about this sort of thing, that's a bad recipe. So she's just on edge over all of this altogether. And when she talks to her dad about it, he doesn't take it quite as seriously as I want him to, because I understand the urge to joke around when she says he proposed and her dad's like, what an asshole. And he's mocking her a little bit, but you do know how important certain things are to her. And I wish that he wouldn't approach it the way that a total stranger would hearing about this. It's, her well enough to understand that this is important to her, and she feels a little bit betrayed now, but whatever. So she doesn't, I don't think she gets approached by Cliff this episode to investigate the bombing. She's just turned up at the site to see what's going on there, right? Is that right? Or maybe Keith got approached and she went with him. I can't remember how it goes. Well, I only have 10 minutes left, so I'm going to talk about Keith now. There is a scene with Keith going to PT that is so upsetting, you guys. So I was just covering previous to this Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. And I started off the episode with kind of a rant. Because, spoilers for Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, the episode I just covered is called I Need a Break. Season 4, episode 12, I think. And she is coping with realizing that mental health care is something that has to be an ongoing process. And she sort of thought that she could do the work and then stop, but stay better. And that's just not how it works, unfortunately. So she has to begin to dive back into the resources that she has to return to therapy, get medicated, all of this stuff. And while I definitely appreciate the message the show is sending, I got frustrated because I have several friends going through mental health crises as we speak. And they are desperately trying to get help. And all the resources out there are garbage. And they are getting ghosted by therapists. They are getting phone calls from psychiatrists who like don't even remember their names or what medications they are on, and giving them prescriptions for things that could interact badly because they don't remember or check shit or write things down. So it was frustrating because I was watching this Crazy Ex-Girlfriend episode where they were sort of acting like just take care of yourself and go get help. And we don't like to acknowledge how difficult that actually is, and how the process of attempting to get help can make it worse because it emphasizes how alone you are and how you don't have any advocate and you are already overwhelmed at sheer life. But now you have to wade through insurance claims and what's in and out of network and covered and not covered if you're lucky enough to even have insurance. Never mind the advent of apps like BetterHelp and Talkspace, where therapists can literally just, like I said, ghost you, never return any texts and not show up for appointments, that kind of thing. And this scene with Keith, I was so grateful at how honest they were in showing what this is like, because he comes to this appointment and he's doing the work, but the person who is supposed to be responsible for him and giving a shit about his progress is checked out. Dude's on his phone scrolling Facebook, literally like having conversations with people, not paying attention in the least. And Keith clearly feels a way about it, but he doesn't say anything. I wish he would. At the same time, I could see him just being like, you know what, I'll fucking do it. All I need is to be in the room with the tools. I don't need you, so fine, fuck off. And we find out that all of this PT is due to that really bad car accident that he was in years ago. And he also is suffering from some memory loss, probably due to brain damage. So there is this, the moment of, let's see, sorry, Ariel says, that was corny, the nice but kind of useless guy from her high school. Wait, is that, I don't remember, that was the guy who was supposed to be doing his PT? Is that what you're saying, Ariel? Is his name corny? Because when you say that was corny, I thought you were talking about, like, the scene was corny and in the way that corny means, you know, but I'm thinking that you're meaning a name. Nancy says the stoner. Not remembering. Sorry. I don't remember it all. Oh, well. But yeah, he sucks at his job. And Keith goes to interview a potential client who is having issues with rats in his store. And Keith is asking the same question because he forgot that he asked it already. And it's a really awful moment. I didn't realize that this was brain damage at the time. So I sort of wondered if it was evidence of him being ill, like he had maybe a tumor, or maybe he was beginning to deal with dementia or something like that. And I got really worried about it. I won't lie, because I was like, I don't need to see Keith dealing with cancer, man. Don't do this. But, you know, what do I know? I'm acting like I know that it's from the trauma to his brain, but it might not be. Maybe he does have fucking cancer and I'm just going to be really mad. So this first client that he's dealing with is he's an Asian grocer, and he keeps on having these incidents with a bunch of customers running out of there because they saw a rat. And the footage of these people running out, he doesn't have footage of the rat itself, but of the people getting spooked and running off. And Keith suspects somebody is releasing a rat and actually pranking the store. I suspect it's something a little bit more sinister related to Dick's dad, who we know is very, very fucking shady. Maybe attempting to drive this guy out of business for some reason. And Keith doesn't charge this guy enough for the job, according to Veronica. And it's really tough because you see the way that, like, Keith is sort of, I think, maybe a little bit resentful that Veronica gave up the potential for this high-powered job in New York City. Because maybe they wouldn't be in the financial situation that they are in, and he wouldn't be in the situation he's in if they were able to afford better care. But, it's also not her responsibility, and very mixed feelings. But Veronica does do something that I really appreciated. The very opening of us rejoining her, she has gone to a client's house and she has to actually climb over a gated entryway that she's beeping to get in, but she's not being allowed in. And when she climbs over and gets inside, she comes across this woman who, this actress is so familiar to me, but I could not place her, who is sitting by this pool. Guys, this pool is absurd. Can you imagine? Oh my God. And it turns out this woman has been being harassed by her ex-husband, who has planted cameras and set up the house with smart technology. So he keeps fucking with her, playing music at all hours, and playing music that's like triggering, like her dead mother's favorite song, that sort of thing. Or he turns the heat up to 90 while she is asleep, so she wakes up like scorching and she can't get it to turn back down. And Veronica figures out what he's doing and does it in turn back to the guy. And I loved what the show did here, because they get you really tempted to be like, good for her, girl power, stopping this shitty guy. But then this woman says something like, can you believe that he only wanted to pay me $90,000 a month in alimony? I mean, yeah, no thanks. I know what you make. And it just slams the brakes of me feeling pity for this woman. Like, look, it does suck that he's doing all of this and he is absolutely garbage, but you have the resources to fucking hire somebody to come in and do all this shit. And at one point she notices this beeping, and it turns out that it's from a smoke detector, and she just like tells Veronica to go replace it because it's not really her thing. And I appreciated so much. Veronica tells her the price is going to be $6,000. And she's like, I thought it was $300 a day. And Veronica says, an hour. And she just writes the check. It's nothing to her. She's like, oh. I was so proud of Veronica for that moment, guys. I really was. She just saw this and was like, you know what? Fuck you. I'm getting my money. Good for you, girl. Yes. For that job, getting back at her ex, and not just figuring out what he did to her, but doing it back to him, she should have charged 12. Let's be honest. But yeah, this is sort of a bit of a stopgap, because her father is clearly undercharging this dude who owns this grocery store, and Veronica overcharging this other woman who can certainly afford it makes it all better. It evens it out a lot. And I just appreciated that moment. There's just can you imagine, guys, $90,000 a month, and you're just like, yeah, I don't think so. I can't, you guys. What is it like? So, this theme of the inequality in the neighborhood and Dick's father, it's weird him being here, but Dick not being in the episode at all. I just kept expecting to see him. Honestly, I would see him being like, Matthew McConaughey. I love high school girls. I keep getting older, but they stay the same age. That's what I see Dick being like. He's the sort of creep that's trying to still party with the teenagers, even though it's just not really cool anymore, but they take advantage of him because he can get them like the good drugs or something, But, maybe he'll turn up. I don't know. Maybe he's turned his life around and he's like an upstanding community member. I don't see that, but maybe. Ariel says, this woman was from Happy Endings. I never saw that. And the bad season of Scrubs. I never finished Scrubs, so I'm assuming that's a later season. But yeah, so like I said, everything wraps with Veronica talking about how she gets a little bit too attached to the motel owner's daughter and gets worried about her. And she's thinking back and wishing in some ways that she had not taken the case. So I'm excited to see what happens. If you guys commission more, this is the last episode that had been commissioned. So if y'all are able to get a slot, it's been a bit of a brawl out there, but some titles are wrapping up finally. So there should be some more room coming up. But yeah, so stay tuned, y'all. If I do get another commission, it won't be for months. I'm booked until almost September at this point. So stay tuned. And hopefully you guys have enjoyed the coverage. And I appreciate you all. So until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.